All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I am here with Mia from Sworkz, and we're going to be talking about a day in the life of an event exhibitor. Mia is a seasoned pro in this space, so I wanted to get some tips and from her and kind of really hear how she thinks about events and some of the approaches she has. I think this would be great if you're interested in getting in live events with your brand, or again, maybe you're already doing it and can pick up some tips and tricks from Mia. So Mia, thanks so much for jumping on with me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me today. I'm super excited about this topic, so I'm eager to get into it.
Great. Awesome. Well, let's start at the beginning, really. Let's talk about what happens before the event.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's definitely a lot of questions you can ask yourself, and so finding out where to start is going to be very tricky. I always like to look at it from the ROI standpoint. If you're going to make an investment, it's got to be worthwhile. So take a look at, the numbers and your objectives. Is your objective going to be branding? Is it going to be requiring and gathering new leads? Is it going to be education? It can be networking. It can be a lot of different things. But based off your objective, you should definitely have some kind of way to measure that so you know if the event was actually worthwhile or not. So that for me would be the very first step. And once you have that measurement, then everything else is working backwards. Understanding how many people it even makes sense to take, because every single person is going to need to be able to bring something back to the table. So what does that kind of look like? If it's going to be leads, does it make sense for one person to capture, I don't know, 10 leads, or can you break it up by 3 people? Is each person going to take only 3 of those of the 10, or are they each going to be assigned 10? There's a lot of things to consider. I would say that depending on, your budget for the year, first take a look, kind of a bird's eye view, how much of that entire budget do you want to dedicate to events? And then from there, understand how many events, or if there are any flagship events that you want to go to. I think that depending on your objective, it might make sense for example, brand awareness to do multiple events, but just as an attendee, versus maybe those bigger companies might just choose 1 or 2 flagship events and go full out on sponsorships. So there's a lot of different options there. And based off that, you also have to decide, are you going to be an attendee? Are you going to be an exhibitor or a sponsor, or do a sponsorship? That's all going to define what kind of resources you need to take. Are you shipping them out? Are you producing them? Do you already have them in stock? That's when you might want to turn to other resources and partners in terms of holding your items, because the logistics of preparing for an event is also a whirlwind of things. So first and foremost, understanding what's your objective. From there, pulling out metrics. And then thirdly, I would say take that backwards route of planning in reverse as to who you want to take, how you want to take over those events. And again, what is your main goal going?
So it sounds like then you really do look at the specific event. If you're going to bring, if it's like a flagship event, like you're saying, you might bring like a big, large booth or something like that. Whereas maybe networking, or if it's a smaller event, you guys just want to have a presence at, you can kind of scale it back. Do you guys have different like booths that you bring to events? How do you think about that?
Yeah, every event has very different kinds of options available. And so one of the things I would also really encourage anybody that's really considering to attend an event is become friends with the individuals that are running the show, because they're going to be able to give you all the insights and really let you know what's worth the bang for your buck. And then through that relationship, you really get to understand the different kind of options that are available. So there's oftentimes different booth sizes. There's even opportunities to do sponsorships at golf events, because you'll oftentimes see a golf event associated with a trade show. There's the option to just be an attendee and walk around. And there's even those individuals that I know that don't even go to the show, but just go to the hotel of the show. And they'll sit and hang out in the lobby or in the bar, and even though they don't actually have a ticket to the show, they, in one way or another, are still part of the show. So there's a lot of different options and ways to definitely take advantage of that. If maybe you live in the Chicago area and you know that there's a show in Chicago, you might want to just happen to stumble by that hotel that afternoon or something along those lines. Definitely taking advantage of having everybody in one area, in addition to what the show itself can offer, which oftentimes is more networking opportunities for lead capturing, structured moments in which people are looking to have conversations and are open to it. Because if you can have all all these people in a room and they're not open to talking with you, then it's not going to be worthwhile. But, one of the main purposes of an event is for it to be, again, that structured opportunity where everybody is going with that open mindset to learn something and know that they're going to be sold to, but they're also selling too.
Yeah, and I think that is obviously one of the main reasons you go, right? Is because it's a rare opportunity. You might have a few days with all these concentrated people. A lot of times you can have a lot of potential customers there. I know people go sometimes just to see their current customers because that's the spot where everyone's going to be, for the year, and it kind of brings everybody together for those days. And it's really a unique time, I think, for marketing and sales and connection.
Hey everyone, this conversation is brought to you by Brand Garage. If you're in sales or event marketing and you're tired of lugging your display cases and marketing material from your office to a hotel to an event location, well, this service is for you. Brand Garage is a centralized storage location for all your brand assets. And with our online inventory portal, you can always see what's available for your next event. You simply share your schedule and our team will reach out before your event to make sure that everything you need will be waiting for you when you get there. And after the show, we'll pick it up and move it back to the warehouse or onto your next location. To learn more, I'll leave a link below or find us at arctransportation.com/brand garage.
Yeah, and I think it's not even just, what's the company's objective as a whole, but also each individual. Like, for example, we're heading to our next show in June, and one of the individuals we have coming with us is from the operational team. And so his main role is going to be to go and strengthen those relationships with our existing customers. We have another person coming from our marketing team, and that person's main job is going to be to set up the entire booth and really help us with those kind of lead capturing and brand awareness strategies. And then the last, two individuals are myself and my right hand, Zach. We're going to be really focusing on lead capturing and sales. So even though we have a strategy as a company, an objective for that event, each individual person is focusing on very, very different things. And so now each four of us have different metrics that we're being, measured on and different things that we need to be accountable for. So when we come back after the event, we need to demonstrate, hey, did we actually meet those objectives? And that doesn't happen, 1 week after the event. That happens months after the event.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so you have all your you think about the show and you have the different departments and teams that you feel like all have their own objectives that you guys feel like you can accomplish. So that sounds like that's a big part of the planning process. And if you guys kind of feel like a green light on all those and that there's an ROI for each department, is that pretty much you go, okay, I think this one makes sense, let's plan on this show?
Yeah, I think that is one of the big decision makers, but I think before we even get to that stage of how many people, who should we take, is really looking at the event itself and looking at it for that specific year. Because I've had some shows where, I've gone 2 years back to back, for example, and the hotel venue really changes the atmosphere. Some of them have the hotel and the event is inside of the hotel. And as I was mentioning before, those kind of organic opportunities to mingle in the elevator or as you're checking in really go a long way versus where I've seen those events that maybe are in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, that nobody really wants to go to, and the venue itself isn't the most conducive. Then we might rule it out, not because we don't want to go to that show, but just because that year it might not be the best setup. So those are the kinds of things that we're really getting to the nitty gritty of how far is the hotel from the exhibit hall. Those little details really do play out. For example, I know there's one event coming up this year that we had crossed off our list, but because the location this year is so ideal, it went back up to the top of our list because I know that there's going to be a huge boom in attendance this year. So definitely take a look at all of the parameters, right? The location, the kind of event, the size of the event, who's going. If I know that my customer base is going, then that's probably going to be an attractive event for me in terms of sales. But I also want to go where my customers are going, So there's a lot of different things to consider, but definitely take a look at who's attending and make sure that, who you're targeting based off your objective is actually there. Because if they're not, then even if there's 1,000 people and you make 1,000 contacts, if none of those are aligned to what you really need, then it's not worthwhile.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about. And since you brought up hotels, that's a kind of perfect transition because I wanted to ask you, do you typically stay at the hotel that the event, usually events have at least a recommended hotel, like you said, it's a combined event. I'm sure people do VRBOs and Airbnbs as well. What do you guys typically do and how do you think through that process?
Yeah. So again, every event is very different. Normally in the past, we had gone through the route of really quoting all of our options and then based off pricing, choosing the best. And then later, as we know, we had some more exposure. We realized that sometimes paying a little bit more is worth it for one, first and foremost, safety and security, because we have a lot of times I'm going by myself or I may have other team members or other females particularly that I want them to make sure that we're putting them in a safe vicinity. And then secondly, like I was mentioning previous too, those kind of more natural and organic moments, you can't pay for that. And if there's a way for me to stay in an Airbnb, if there's a huge, cost difference and I can stay in an Airbnb but still take advantage of those opportunities, then we'll definitely make that sacrifice. But for the most part, we've been noticing that the difference in pricing from a hotel versus, an Airbnb, for the sake of an example, typically it goes a longer way for us to pay a little bit more in the investment of staying in the hotel and really, again, taking advantage of all those opportunities because for myself in particular, those are the moments in which I connect the most with individuals. During the day, a lot of them are in education sessions, taking advantage of what the conference is offering them. So they're not in those moments to, just talk and catch up over coffee. But in the afternoon, when everyone's going to catch a break or lay by the pool or grab a drink, if you're leaving the venue, you're missing out on those moments.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm guessing too, like you said earlier, depending on the city that it's in and where the event is, it probably determines how you think about a hotel versus a rental.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and then definitely changes how much it costs, right? Sometimes when we're four people and we also have to consider genders, right? Who are we kind of putting with who? I'm probably not going to room with my male coworkers. So if, it's just me and a male colleague, we'll definitely need two rooms versus maybe one Airbnb that has, two segmented rooms. That's a huge cost difference if you're thinking of an event, for example, in Vegas where those rooms are, out the wazoo.
Right, absolutely. And this kind of goes to say just with probably the distance of the show to where you guys are at, but I don't know if you have a remote team or if everyone works in the same building. Do you guys typically drive or fly or, if it is that, again, depending on proximity?
Yeah, great question. So most of our team is in Colombia in South America, except for myself. So logistics is a huge piece that we consider. It's not as easy for us to, attend 12, 15 events in a year, but maybe we can, again, focus on a couple of the bigger shows and really go full out on those. So that is a big piece for us, especially to the point of, are we going to go as attendees or are we going to go and have a booth set up? Because the logistics of getting the items sent over or purchasing them, whether we're building them in Colombia and getting them produced there or doing it in the United States, it's not the funnest part of the process. And that's also played into our decision making about the hotel. Even if, the hotel is or the Airbnb is right in front of the venue, carrying an 8-foot long, banner with a bunch of other boxes isn't the greatest and the easiest thing to do. So that's also been a big push to, if we can stay in the hotel venue and really go all out in specific important events, that's normally the route we're going to, as opposed to last year where I had done 18 in a year and it was very much just like, show up everywhere and just be there. And, that definitely had its return for us. We were able to build a name for Sworkz. But now we definitely want to focus on strengthening those connections that were made from those 18 events last year.
So let's go back to now when you arrive at the event. So if let's say you guys picked your event, you have the venue, that's all set up. In a typical day, you're there. Is it a day typically early or 2 days early, or does it just depend on the show?
Yeah. So it depends if you're attending or if you're doing a booth setup. If you're doing the setup, typically that is the day before. And obviously we need to look at, prices and flights. But what we like to do is have that buffer day just because we are sending people from very far away. So we need that buffer time for the majority of the part. And yeah, we'll spend that first day really working on, again, setting up the booth. And once that's all set up and we have our game plan for the week, we can use those extra hours in the first day, ideally to connect with people we know that are going there, or maybe other individuals that aren't going to the show but live in the area. And if not, then we get a couple of extra hours, in that city. Those are kind of our extra, our win, right? But we do have a meeting where we kind of go over our game plan. We do that previous to the event, and we also do it on the first day, just again to make sure that we're all aligned and ready to go. And we kind of have those recap meetings every day of the event in the afternoon, just to kind of touch base, because we're very much the divide and conquer mentality. So we don't want to, send 4 people and have all 4 people float together to every single booth and every single event. That doesn't make much sense. We really like to have our teammates and our team members to really kind of split up. So having that one designated space where we can all connect, make sure that we all know what we're doing, if anybody's got any questions or concerns, and then break up again. And then if we end up linking again, great. If not, great.
Great, yeah. And that makes me think, when you said setup, what about your swag, right, or your giveaways? Is that something that you guys typically ship to the show, or how do you guys get that stuff there?
A lot of our materials we do make in Colombia, and so we need to ship it over to the U.S. And we do have some space in the United States. I can definitely hold some items as well, but I only have so much space in my apartment. So we don't necessarily have like a drop stop where we can have all this storage of all of our swag. So for our purposes, we're very much order per need basis. So for an event, we'll pre-plan and kind of quantify what we need and how much we need, and then get that built. And then depending on the event itself, sometimes you have the opportunity to send it directly to, with or without extra payment. Sometimes you don't. I know that some events or trade shows work with providers that help you with the setup, and so you can pay them to help you with the setup. From what I've seen, I see that can be very costly at times, but I also see the huge savings in terms of energy, and the pain of, again, carrying an 8-foot banner across the street. So we ideally, when possible, send it directly to the event. But oftentimes for just cost savings reasons, that's not always the best option for us. And so I'll just put it in my suitcase and, bring it in myself, and then we'll go in there and use that free day to set it all up.
So you got everything there. You're set up the day before. You got your booth sweat up. You got all your stuff laid out. Let's talk about the actual event. Day one. What does your typical day look like? Like, when do you start your day, and how do you think about your day and structure your time throughout the day?
Yeah. And I also want to, as I speak to this question, there's a lot of things we've changed as we've gone through this process based off what we've learned and based off our objectives. But in the beginning, it was very much, and this is kind of my fault, being there at 7 in the morning and staying all the way till 7 in the morning. I kind of work 24-hour days, and it was a little bit too much, because I thought that I was taking advantage of being in that area with individuals that I was looking to speak with and connect with. But what I've realized is that really the first day is a dead day. Nobody really comes that morning. Depends on, again, the conference itself. Normally they'll have a reception. Their first day is like an evening reception. That evening reception is always something to definitely be at. And then the day following the evening reception, which some consider day 2, some consider like day 1. I consider that really day 1. That morning, people typically aren't there because they had a really fun time at the night reception. So we very much have changed our strategy to not be there at 6 in the morning at breakfast, and if not, take advantage of having different people who have different preferences. So one team member might want to be there at 7 in the morning, and they might want to wrap up by 5, 6, while another team member might want to be there at 9, 10 in the morning, and wrap up much later in the evening. or morning of the following day. So we really allow, kind of our team to come and present what they want to do and why they think that that's the best plan. And then again, that kind of divide and conquer approach. So allowing everybody that first day to really show up when they think it makes sense after, within reason, obviously. I personally like to be there with around 8, 9 in the morning, right when breakfast is wrapping up and the first sessions are getting started, because that's when I like to, I believe that I see a lot of movement, and I definitely encourage anybody to take advantage of the networking breaks or any receptions that they do. Any happy hours, definitely go to those. Again, they're more structured moments where everyone's forced into space and is open to talking to one another.
Yeah, you often hear from people that do this a lot is, that's where a lot of business is done. And obviously it's a relation. We're all in this for relationships, right? So being at a place where, at the after hours, people just start chatting and stuff happens,
Yep.
right? Business gets done. So.
Exactly. And again, to our point previous too about the venue, some venues are for families. And so some people are there with their families and that's going to be their objective. And some conference venues are, in Philadelphia where nobody wants to bring their family. And so you're going to see different kinds of attitudes. And those are things that, that they might be small little changes, but it's going to change, what people are looking to do and what they're looking to accomplish. And so by default, it should change your approach to wanting to speak with them if sales is your goal, obviously.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's talk about meetings with customers or meetings with people that you've been trying to connect with. They're going to be at the show. Do you typically have pre-scheduled meetings throughout the day, or do you try to leave the day open just to be available to what's going to happen or what the show's doing, or do you let the show kind of dictate what your schedule is going to be like?
Yeah. So in the past, we had the mindset that showing up with no meetings was better, because we were able to take full advantage of that time to just meet people. I think it worked for its moment because, again, we were able to get that awareness out about Sworkz. But now we do want to take advantage of strengthening those relationships. So having those in-person meetings are really important, because I can meet with you on Zoom every day, but once we meet in person, the relationship definitely changes. Yeah. So we definitely do and invest a lot in pre-outreach to make sure that we have meetings set up when we're at the event, and that's still ongoing during the event. And that outreach itself can happen either through LinkedIn, through email, through calling, or through the event app. And every event has, again, a different setup. Some have apps and some have some really killer apps. So I would definitely encourage anybody to always check those apps out, because sometimes they make it super, super easy for booking meetings. You guys will be able to see each other's calendars. You can see all the attendees. You can send them a calendar request immediately and invite them to your booth, or choose depending on what the event looks like. Sometimes they have meeting zones, those kinds of things. So absolutely invest in taking some time to book those meetings. You can even have the team that doesn't attend the conference reaching out and saying, hey, what's up, Joe? Just so you know, my colleague Mia is going to this event. Take some time to meet her and chat with her and learn and see if we can provide value to you. Those are the kinds of things that you want to see ongoing during the event. And you don't want to stop till after either. After the event, just because you didn't meet them doesn't mean that it's over. They're still alive. You could still hit them up and say, hey, Joe, we never got to meet, but I would still love to meet you. Can we talk about this?
That's a great hack too. So with a lot of these apps, do you have to be on location? Does it know, like with geofencing, if you're there, can your colleague that's remote log onto the app and start communicating and chat with people?
For the most part, in my experience, what I've seen is that the app is just up with a login, so I could share it in theory with my whole team, and we can all be on there sending messages from one profile.
All right, that's a pro tip right there. That's a smart move. How about the conferences that happen, or the seminars, I guess, or the training that happen within the conference? Is that something you guys usually attend? Do you guys plan to ever, or do you guys try to teach or sponsor those? Do you attend them? Do you guys kind of skip them to regroup, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us particularly, For the most part, and again, it's going to depend on who we're sending and the goal. We don't typically do the sessions. We'll do maybe like the opening session or one of the closing remarks because it really gives an all-encompassing. I like to go to the ones that do like a little mini highlight of market trends and predictions for the future, because that really allows me to understand what my customers are feeling now and where we're going forward to. But yeah, so for example, we'll probably have, the individual I mentioned previously focused on operations. He might spend some time dabbling in there just to make sure that, we want to make sure we're still involved and we know what's going on around us so we can be a resource for our customers. But at the same time, our goals are normally more brand awareness oriented, building relationships, networking, or generating new prospects. So for those reasons, sitting in a session isn't going to be the most conducive for me. What I can do in a session though is if they're shorter ones, I'll come in and talk a little bit with the individuals sitting near me, but probably won't stay for the entire session. So maybe we'll dabble, but for us particularly, it's not really a big focus. From what I've seen from other individuals, a lot of them go with that mentality. That's their objective, just fully learning so they can bring it back to their team. So that's when you start to see, the difference in who's there to party, who's there to escape their family, who's there to actually learn, who's there to sell. Everyone's got a different goal, and you can really start to identify those people once you realize that they're kind of structured that way.
Interesting. So you guys just definitely take a strategic approach to every hour of this of the show, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So what about, we mentioned kind of after hours, like they often have an event or a networking event right after maybe the floor hours have closed. Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on that. Like those are great to be at because those are kind of unique experiences where you can connect with people more, and there's kind of a large concentration of people hanging out in one area. From a business standpoint, what about you and your team? Do you guys have a daily debrief, or do you guys wait till the show's over, or when do you guys connect on kind of what's happening?
Yeah. So typically those like after hour receptions, you'll see like it's the full day. Normally there's like a little bit of a break, or it goes straight into the reception and then there's a little bit of a break, and then there's more happy hour like after parties. So what we do is wherever that little space is, whether it's pre or post to the little reception, we'll get together. But it's a pretty quick get together because it's just to make sure that we know where everybody is kind of going. A lot of the happy hours are sponsored, and so they're not public to everybody. They might be invite only. So we take those moments to really talk and say, hey, this is what I got. This is what I got. How are we going to kind of divide it up? And then we recommend each individual, and we do build out kind of like a sample schedule for all the attendees before attending. So we have in there already pre-cut a time to spend in just really getting our information together. If I met 50 people today, I don't want to lose track of that. So in whatever document we're using to, keep track of that information, I'm going to spend, those 30 minutes or maybe 60 minutes to work on that. That's something that we want to do, and we have it in the schedule. It doesn't always happen because it's very much a go rhythm of the show itself, and that's just kind of how I keep myself moving. So I don't normally take those little breaks. We'll do the little touch base, and then we kind of just keep running to the next event. If there's no next event and there's people in the hallways, or maybe we'll hear them at the hotel bar, then we'll kind of go over to where they are over there. So really our main goal at all times is just engage and interact and take advantage of being in a vicinity with people that we're looking to connect with, and definitely spend some time relaxing, because you don't want your body to catch up and the lack of sleep to catch up, and then after the event you fall sick. I learned from that last year, and so we're very much trying to address that and prevent that this year.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you realize these events can be 4 days long, and that's not including the setup day and the teardown day, and that could be a full week. And they really are, they feel like a sprint when you get there, but they turn into a
Yep.
marathon pretty quickly. And you're like, man, I gotta have energy. I gotta be ready to go on every day here. And I think that's a challenge that people need to, really consider when they're signing up for events. So I think you're, talking about that makes a lot of sense, and have people realize like, hey, you do need to actually like make sure you're taking care of yourself at the same time, because you are on basically as soon as you're
Nonstop.
nonstop throughout the event.
Yeah, one of the tips that I would give, first, I have a very supportive team, and so they've helped me with that in terms of making those breaks on our schedule, following up with us to make sure we're taking those breaks. They'll even send us with like snack bars and those kinds of things to take care of ourselves. But the other piece being, if you can't get enough sleep, definitely take care of yourself physically. I know that a lot of people go to, go drink and have fun, and that's okay. We don't put necessarily rules on our team because they are adults and they can definitely make their own decisions, and they know what is and isn't a good decision. But huge suggestion to definitely be careful with the alcohol. From my feet, I've seen other individuals maybe take it a little bit further and definitely regret it the next day, and it affects the entire show for them, and obviously professionally not the best impression. But you're going to be thankful when you're drinking water when everybody else the next day is hungover and you're not. So huge recommendation there. You can go to the happy hours, you can go mingle, but just get water. That's okay.
That's right. No, that is truly a great tip. And the other thing to think about too, right, is your time zone. If you're flying across the country and you're in a different time zone, I've been at shows where it's funny because you wake up because you just can't sleep in because you're so used to waking up. So, at 4 a.m., everybody from the East Coast is down in the exercise room on a treadmill or something, because everyone had the same thing. I woke up staring at the ceiling like, all right, what am I going to do until for the next 3 hours?
Yeah, and work doesn't stop. So just because you're at an event doesn't mean that everything else isn't going on. It still is. So you have to, kind of front the work previous to the event, during the event, kind of tag team what you have going on at the show, but also back home. And then when you get back, you're rushing to catch up with what already fell behind and all the new stuff that you now have to do as a result. So it's definitely not for the weak-minded. It's not easy, and it's not easy to do multiple back-to-back. And I think it was Nate Johnson that had posted something on LinkedIn recently about trade shows, and I thought it was really clever what he was saying. This isn't just the 4 days of the show. This is an all year thing. Your pre-event outreach and your post-event outreach can be all 12 months of the year around one single event. So you can definitely squeeze that out as much as you would like to. It's on you and your team to strategize that. So keep that in mind, because it's not just going to be the 4 days of the show.
Yeah, I would, and I definitely want to talk to you about that too, about post show. But before I jump into that too, what's the last day of the show like when the show's actually over, but you guys are checking out? Are you just kind of just cleaning up your booth area and packing everything back up? What's that day typically look like? Do you leave usually that day, or do you guys stick around?
If we're gonna do a booth, the day that we can take down the booth exhibition, there's usually a specific window. That's when we'll spend that time breaking that down, normally as soon as possible. And if we can that evening, we'll leave, because then again we can be able to save that money on another hotel room when it's not needed. And typically the breakdown is pretty quick, but because for us, if we're not sending something back within our own suitcases, we're typically donating the rest. We've had events where we had to order tables and chairs and those kinds of things, and so we'll just take them to a donation center, whether we had a car rental or we can send it through an Uber pickup, those kinds of things. If we're not doing an event, a booth, we are going to leave probably the last session day, which usually you'll see sessions in the morning and it stops around noon. From what I've seen for most events, nobody's actually there. They usually leave during like the big final night reception or right in the morning the next day. So in the past, we had, planned to make sure we're there for the entire event and leave the day after. And every time we did that, we would just change our flights because nobody ended up actually being there on the last day. So definitely recommend if you go to a show. And this isn't for those that are, for example, home delivery world that is just only exhibition based for 2 days. Those are full exhibition days. I would go for full exhibitions. But I'm talking about those occasions, maybe like TIA or Jumpstart, where the last evening is 3 or 4 hours of just, last final meetings or maybe some awards. Nobody is typically there from my perspective.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences where we had, meetings and they just start to fall off, and people, there really is an ebb and flow to a trade show, right? Even though the calendar might say it's all these days. And I think you guys have really alluded to this. You've picked up, like, we try to work the way that the people are working, right? So we want to actually look at that. And that really you can only have through experience by going. So I really appreciate, again, you sharing all this stuff because if you look out from the outside, you might think a show is going to go one way based on a calendar. But when you're actually at the show, you learn, okay, it operates a little differently when you're here.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I would definitely recommend, making those alliances with the individuals who run the show and really work on those sponsorship items because they'll be very transparent with you. They're going to tell you if you ask them directly, hey, is this good for this objective? Those kinds of things, they'll be straight up with you. And if not, then ask people that have previously attended because otherwise the rest of the people are just going to tell you, look at the website, look at the schedule. And again, it is a structure that is the program, but the actual interpretation or implementation of it is quite different.
So going back to your leads and kind of the after show, I guess, could you just give us a quick insight on what you guys do to process the leads that you got, or what is your typical strategy around reaching out? Just from my experience, you get bombarded, it seems like, the next day after a show by everyone who got your email. Do you guys typically try to go quick? Do you guys try to slow play it a little bit?
I think that what we want to do isn't physically, humanly possible. So we're still trying to figure out what is best and what can we actually do. We do like to kind of get on it quickly because I think that that's when the conversation is most warm in the mind and that relationship is still, kind of warmed up as well. But again, it's not physically possible to reach out to everybody. We meet a lot of people. I personally meet over 100 a day, and so it's not that quick. So what I do first and foremost is really organize all my thoughts and my ideas and really understand, okay, who is it that I spoke with for sales objectives, who's actually having an urgent need and definitely needs to talk with me ASAP, and that's who I'm going to reach out to first, and then kind of prioritize the rest. Who had and spoken about maybe interest but didn't really talk about any punctual need. And then very lastly, who did I meet? And maybe, there's not necessarily anything in mind that we can work on today, but is somebody that I want to stay connected with and, keep in my network. So those are kind of the three pockets that I break it out into. And then I'll kind of attack them based off that exact priority, using the communication channels of their preference and what I have access to. For the most parts, we'll have business cards being swapped, and so I'll have their LinkedIn or their email. But in some cases, maybe that didn't happen, and so I'll have to look through the app, kind of really working around that way. We also need to have, when there's multiple people going, making sure that we're not all writing to the same person, So we need to have some kind of team strategy, but we're not stepping on each other's toes. So basically taking a step back to before we even outreach, where are we storing this information? On a Google Doc, kind of on a spreadsheet where we have different cells and we have some stuff that's non-negotiable, like the person's name, and we have some stuff that our team can later help us find, like their website, for example. And we'll use that sheet to really organize all of our information, and then again, from there, really split it up. We will also, as a fourth bucket, not from the attendees themselves, but from Sworkz and the marketing team, send like a post-event recap to all of those we met, just so they kind of, remember our faces and get a little, kind of welcome home. This was the fabulous week that we had together. Little email. It's kind of a momentum. Again, it's a way for them to remember us, whether they want to reach back out to that email or they just want to keep that in their trash box. However they want to do that, it's something that we like to enjoy, and I think it does, go into the long-term play of that post outreach and making sure we still have those connections.
Gotcha. So you guys have a really good structure there for breaking those down, and you've really obviously thought through that. That's sounds like a really smart strategy. In your experiences, are the shows typically, do they provide an ROI? I mean, there's always you never know what's going to happen, but in your past shows, have they proven to bring on new customers or to kind of meet some of your other objectives that you guys had there?
In simple answers, yes, but I will also kind of counter in the sense that it depends on what kind of time window you're looking at. Sometimes people look at the event 1 month later and they say, hey, let's see if, we met our goals. 1 month later, maybe you met, your LinkedIn follower growth goal, but not necessarily your deals closed, depending on how your deal cycle is. Personally, because a lot of my approach isn't to just sell, and, push down somebody's throat. I very much go down I just want to meet people and I want to learn from people and I want to build genuine relationships. And so a lot of times because of that approach, my sales cycle are much longer because it's built off a true relationship as opposed to just, let's get this, sale done. So with that being said, if you maybe look at my performance 3 months after an event, you might think, wow, Mia did nothing and there is absolutely no return on that investment. But if you open it up to a year after an event, I have multiple deals that have been, come to fruition after a year of meeting them at an event. And so that it's kind of tricky. It depends again on what are you measuring and how are you measuring it. So in conclusion, though, I will say that for us, it's been very valuable. I think we can definitely take advantage of more value of the events by making that entire process more of a 12-month view as opposed to just the week of the event. And again, that's something that we are really rolling out this year, and that's why we've decreased, our events from 18 to less than 10. I don't even know how many we're doing this year. 5 to 10, I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. So, so it has, and to your point, it sometimes if you go to that show every year, it takes years until people realize, hey, they're at that show again. Or if that's the only time you're seeing people and maybe they're not super responsive to outreach after the show, but you can still connect with them there. You never know what can happen right through that relationship and what's going to be around the corner for any business, which is why I think live events is so powerful and why they really came back strong after COVID. I think there was the remote thing for a while, but people really do generally want to connect in person and meet and talk, which is why I'm super thankful to have this conversation. I think anybody listening is going to definitely have some tips and be smarter next time they go at their show, from what you shared today. So I actually wanted to ask you too, is there a favorite hotel that you like going to that has live events?
Great question. I don't think I have a favorite hotel, but I will say recently the JW Marriott in Phoenix for TIA was absolutely beautiful. And any event in Vegas is a blast. those I would definitely emphasize on.
All right, so the other one is usually at these after hours events, there's always a karaoke machine. So what's your go-to song, Mia? What's your favorite karaoke song?
It's actually funny that you ask because I am traumatized by karaoke. I'm typically the one that will run away when the karaoke mic comes out. But if I had to sing, I would probably do something from High School Musical and pull out Gabriella
Nice.
and Troy and get a whole little duo on stage.
Nice. Get some theater songs going. Nice. Awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome. Can you just talk to us too just for a minute on what Sworkz does and what you're doing there?
Yeah, definitely. So Sworkz is a talent as a service solutions provider, and basically what we do is we have turnkey teams ready to go for our customers in a variety of different roles and functions. Anywhere from your back office, a tracking team, or your accounting support, all the way to your front line of BDRs. It could even be your marketing team members, or even tech, engineers, developers, things of that nature. We very much focus on the logistics transportation industry, and we're very flexible and very transparent people. So we're happy to work with our customers and really meet them at their needs. And if you're ever interested in learning more, feel free to look up Sworkz on LinkedIn. Sworkz Group is our email. We're also on X. We're on TikTok. Our TikTok is actually a lot of fun if you want to check that out, as well as Instagram. Or feel free to reach out to myself. My name is Mia Mazal, and I focus on business development and partnerships. So if anybody ever has any questions about Sworkz or talent as a service or nearshoring as a whole, I'm more than happy to discuss.
Well, Mia, again, thank you so much for jumping on and talking with us today. I think we covered a lot of what it looks like for an event marketer and what a day in the life actually looks like, and some of the things that you got to think through and experience when you're there. So again, appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for your time. I'm happy to share it, and I hope it brings somebody some tools that they can use. And if they ever want to have any questions and want to speak with me, I'm open and happy to.
Awesome. Thanks, Mia.
Thanks, Matt.